Members?
Yep.
Members of council?
Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Town of Pelham Council for Monday, June 18th, 2018, to order. We'll start our meeting with the singing of the national anthem. Councillor Papp will lead us, and I would ask all who are able to rise.
O Canada,
Looking here now.
our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Councillor Papp, and everyone for adapting to the situation. Normally the flag's on that side, in case you didn't figure that out, so thank you all. Now we move to adoption of the agenda. It has been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Lane. Be it resolved that the agenda for the June 18th, 2018 regular meeting of council be adopted. Are there any changes to the agenda? Councillor Durling.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to add under reports of members of council, a report from a Love My Hood party that was held over the weekend.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor King, will you second that?
I will.
Thank you. Thank you, and that will go under item 11.1. Going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment carries. Any other items or changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question on the amended agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Next is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is any conflicts of interest that any members of council may have with any of the items on the agenda. Do any members have any conflicts that they would like noted?
No, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
thank you, and I have none. Thank you. Now we'll move into, we have a number of presentations, delegations this evening, so we'll move right into them. And I would ask the Deputy Mayor to assist me on this. We're going to be honoring another Ontario provincial champion. So I'm going to go down to the podium, and if Councillor Ribiac could join me. So we were so pleased when we found out, and I think the community was cheering for our champion, and this is Danielle Landry. Landy, is that how you say it, Landy? Landy, sorry. Ontario Provincial Champion. Danielle started with the Niagara Center Skating Club only a few years ago, and many people, coaches, didn't think she would make it because she had a late start in her career. This is from her coach. Her coach, Liz, kept saying Danielle had a great determination and a competitive spirit, and that she would go a very long way in this sport. Danielle did that this year. She moved up 3 categories from last year when she started. She received the first in the Isabel Henderson in Paris, first in the John Maclay in Tillsonburg, first in the Charles Dover in Grimsby, first in the Dennis Silverthorne in St. Thomas, first in the March Mania in Lafroy, first in the high school competition. Then she qualified second to skate at the provincial championship where she was first with a score of 21.85 in the final skate-off in Kingston, Ontario. Danielle will go in this sport with continue full-time training, and her coach wants to thank her for this wonderful journey, and I think we should all wish her the very best and congratulate her. We would ask that you come up and accept just a scroll here of congratulations to you. Congratulations to you. That's outstanding. This is Councilor Ribiak. Good for deputy. This says the Ontario Figure Skating Championship Council of the Town of Pelham extends congratulations and best wishes to the 013 Star 5 champion Danielle Landy, Niagara Centre Skating Club, presented today. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Give her a round of applause, everybody. I think quick photo. You want to do a little photo here?
Sure.
We look forward to you showing off those skills in the new Pelham Meridian Community Center. So it's coming up, and this figure skating club is coming back to Pelham, and we look forward to you showing off those skills for us there. All right, congratulations. Let's give her a round. Now, is her coach here? Is Liz here? No, Liz isn't here. I don't know if you'll be seeing her. Would you be able to present this to her? Okay, her mom and sister are here. So, congratulations. Thank you. So we can present that to the coach. Thank you. Thanks again. Congratulations to you. It's outstanding, and we look forward to seeing that. We'll watch for you starting in the fall. Congrats. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Ribiak, and congratulations again. You're welcome to stay for the entire meeting, but you don't have to. Probably have exams and homework and things like that this year. So thank you so much for coming in. Congratulations again, Danielle. We're very pleased. Council will recall, we're going to move on to the next presentation. Council will recall that we some time ago asked the region to come and present to us a month and a half or so ago. And we're very pleased that the project manager, Cam Milne, is here from Niagara Region. And he brought some support as well, so that's great. And he's going to give us a little bit of a presentation on what's in store for Rice Road. There's a number of changes, so thank you very much, Mr. Milne.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Pleased to be here to provide a presentation on this Rice Road project. This project's been in the works for quite a while. It all pretty much started with the East Fonthill secondary plan. In this first screen, you'll see on the left, that is the concept that came in the first plan, and it dealt with primarily transportation issues, and it was the intersection of Highway 20, what was known as Street A at that time, Port Robinson Road, and then what was known as Station Street. Those are the 1 to 4 on the left. On the right is an index plan showing the various streets that we're now dealing with. A couple have been added on through the process. We're still looking at Highway 20. We're looking at Street A, which is now known as Shaw Boulevard. Actually, sorry, that was later added as Street C. Street A was Summersides Drive. We've Port Robinson. Butler Street, or Myrtle Street, was added on, and Walker Road is also known as Station Street, I believe. This is a list of the various studies that we've considered through this process. As I said, the first was in May of 2010 with the town's secondary plan, transportation plan. And then back in 2012, the region's development charge study made allowance for funds to be set aside for this project. Then in 2014, we did a corridor study just to review the recommendations from the initial transportation plan. And then a further study was the East Fonthill Secondary Plan Phase 1 Traffic Impact Study, which pretty much confirmed the recommendations out of the Rice Road Corridor Study. And then further along was the East Fonthill Site Master Plan And the takeaway from that was the recommendation that the multi-use trail be constructed all the way along the length of the development lands, and that's been incorporated in the design. This is a brief timeline. Started in 2010 with the secondary plan. As I said, the development charge study in 2012, the traffic impact study for the phase 1, then the Rice Road corridor, the site master plan, and then in 2016 we got started. We hired a consultant who did the detailed design, and later that year a geotechnical investigation. Public meeting was held with council. It was sort of done in conjunction with the planning process, and the draft drawings were presented at that point. In 2017 we did utility relocations and property acquisition. There's, I think, over $500,000 was spent on utility relocation, and 4 property acquisitions were required, primarily at Port Robinson Road. And then we had a formal public information center on March 6th in 2018 at the library, and that was to present the detailed design and construction schedule to the public. March 24th, I believe that was May 24th, we tendered it. The tender is closed, and we're going to be going to Public Works Committee with the recommendation. I believe it's June 24th. As far as an environmental assessment on this project, it's considered a Schedule A+, which means the various components are pre-approved. There are intersection improvements, road reconstruction, and intersection improvements, signalization. This is just a clip out of the one of the reports from the secondary plan. This is actually from the East Fonthill site master plan, and this shows a typical cross-section of Rice Road, the multi-use trail, and then the development lands to the west. And this is a further shot from the same report dealing with the entire development all the way from Highway 20 down to Pelham's regional or municipal boundary. And there's a picture of the multi-use trail as it stands today. These are, the next are various shots of the intersection improvements. So this is at Highway 20. We're adding a dedicated right and left turn lane because the traffic movements are so high there. There used to only be, or there presently is only 2 lanes there, so this should move the traffic through a lot more easily. This is moving to the south. This is Shaw Boulevard, and on Rice Road there's going to be a left turn lane provided to allow traffic to turn left onto Shaw Boulevard and allow free movement of northbound traffic as well.
Mr. Miller, we've now renamed that Meridian Way, just for future reference.
Yep.
Thank you.
And we move down to Summerside's Drive, or Boulevard, and it's very similar. It has a left turn lane into allow those turns and allow through movement for the northbound traffic as well. This is down at Port Robinson Road. This is now going to be a signalized intersection with turning lanes in all 4 directions for left turns and advanced turns. Further south, we come to Myrtle Street. This was an additional street that was added as the developments came online. So we've made allowance for that one as well, again with left turn lanes to allow in and out easier. And then to the south is Walker Road, and that I believe turns into Station Street, and again it's very similar, left turn lane but not signalized. Backing up, I skipped over this, but part of the various studies through this process have considered Merritt Road, and the region will be undertaking an environmental assessment of the possible extension of Merritt Road from Highway 406 all the way over to Rice Road to address increased capacity as a result of all this development land. And because that's a new roadway, it will be what's called a Schedule C EA, which will be a fairly extensive study. And I believe that's scheduled to start in, I think about 2020. We've got funds set aside for that. Construction. So as I said, this project's being tendered. We had 6 bids that were competitive. We're going to Public Works Committee. It's over $6 million worth of construction. And due to the magnitude of the project, it's going to be phased over 2 seasons. It's impossible to get it all done in one. So we'll be starting at Highway 20 and coming down to about 100 meters north of Port Robinson Road. We're hoping to get that started in July. And then phase 2 will be from that point further south, including the Port Robinson intersection. And that one we hope to get started very early in the year so we can take full advantage of early construction and get that work completed early as possible in the year. That's kind of it in a nutshell. Be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for the presentation and for showing us the pictures of what's intended at each of those intersections. And of course, we'll look forward to that coming forward at Public Works Committee. I'll open it up to questions from members of council. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has come up time and time again, Cam. It's been brought to my attention many times. There's great concern turning off Highway 20 onto Rice Road with the storm management pond there, that people are afraid, especially in the wintertime, that if they slip on ice, that they're going to end up going for a swim. What's going to be done to mitigate any problems there and make sure safety is there?
That's not a concern that we've heard to date, but certainly we'll take a look at it. My first reaction would be that the speeds of a left turn lane should be low enough that it shouldn't be out of control, but we do have a barrier curb. That's something we can definitely look at, whether there's a need for a guide rail or anything like that that might be further warranted. But I can take that back and we can look at that.
I appreciate that, because it's been brought to my attention many times, and actually I have brought that up in other discussions when presentations regarding Rice Road were brought forward. So I'm
Okay.
surprised that nobody's heard it, but if you can take it back, that's
Sure.
much appreciated.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Others? Councillor Papp?
Thank you, Mr. Milne. I have 2 quick questions. So from what I see in your design, Rice Road will continue to be a 2-lane roadway.
That's right, yeah.
So there's no intent of putting any kind of turning lane, any expansion over the years. Both Councillor Durley and I have been here a number of years. I remember there was one design where we saw there was going to be 3 lanes, turning lanes, so we're back down to 2 lanes.
Yes, that's right. It's 2 through lanes, 1 in each direction with the various turning lanes at the side streets. You're right, there were concepts early on about
Right.
3-lane. I think there was even talk about a 5-lane thrown
Right.
around. We've done the traffic analysis and it's not warranted. However, as time goes by and who knows what kind of development will take place in the area.
Right.
The right-of-way, there is room that if further expansion was required, say 20, 30, 40 years down the road, there is room for expansion if needed. But at this point, the traffic analysis doesn't indicate warrant. However, that part of that also ties in with the fact that we're looking at that extension of Merritt Road.
Right.
Because because it's such a large development, we've got people going to the north now primarily, but it could quite easily be split to traffic go to the north to 20 and south to Merritt. Merritt has that interchange right at Highway 406. I believe, I've been told that there was way back when even Thorold did, I forget the name of the study, but their secondary plan for that area, that extension was identified even at that point.
That's correct.
So it's been in the works, so that'll be the next step in this development.
It's called Port Robinson West
Yeah,
Secondary.
you're right.
So quickly, so the EA for that, for the Merritt Road extension is scheduled for 2020?
I believe so.
But that's much more intense EA, right?
Yes, definitely. Yes. Frank
Okay.
confirms that it is 2020, that's when we'll start the study, and I believe it's 2022. 2022, the money is earmarked for
Earmarked for
construction.
that.
Now, whether it gets through council,
Right.
we'll see.
My other question is one of my favorites, but I obviously, and it's nothing, so we're going to, I was hoping we'd put a roundabout at Rice Road. I can't help it, I thought we were going to try and do that. And now I see we're going to,
Hoping that.
all of, not just me, but I see we're going to signalize it, is that?
That's right, yeah. Initially, it was the very first secondary plan transportation study, talked about signalizing.
Right,
When we did the corridor study, we asked our consultant to look at the possibility of roundabout. They
Right.
went through it. Their recommendation or their conclusion was it wasn't preferred just because of the amount of land that would be involved. It would be very costly, and
okay,
subsequent to that, the two developments on the west side of the road came into effect, and there's a stormwater management pond on both the north and southwest side. So that would push a roundabout, if one were to be constructed to the east, which would require probably totally buying out the residential property on the northeast corner,
Right.
tearing the house down, taking a portion of Rice Road Greenhouse as a bulk yard out of commission. And in addition to that, you have restrictions to driveways on the approaches to roundabouts, because basically you've got one-way traffic. So that would affect possibly the church to the north, Fort Robinson's as well.
that
So
would be included.
for all those reasons, it was determined that it wasn't practical to put in a roundabout at that location, unfortunately. I'm
I was
sorry.
dreaming, I was hoping that we'd have, but I guess we'll see what happens with the lights. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mr. Mill.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Sounds like it would have been a big roundabout. Other questions? Council received a letter, which I believe we passed along to the region, about Rice Road Greenhouse and the potential for a turning lane. I believe it was going south and into Rice Road. Is there any, can you give us an update on that at all?
We hired the traffic consultant, sub-consultant to look at that specifically, a separate study. They looked at it, they spoke to the owners to get an idea of volume of traffic. It was determined that obviously a majority of their business is really seasonal, early spring. And that, combined with the fact that the new Myrtle Street is almost a dogleg configuration, which geometric became very difficult. So in the end, and through conversations with the owner of Rice Road Greenhouses, it was determined that it wasn't really practical to do that for them.
Okay.
And they were okay with that idea. But part of it also was they have the two entrances, which aren't designated definitely in or out. It's kind of full traffic movement from both of them, and that further complicated it, because in order to provide a left turn lane for them, it would mean altering their parking lot and the flow of their traffic.
Okay.
So that kind of worked against it as well.
Great, I appreciate you looking into it and answering the question. Some of the other feedback that I received following, and I'm sure council did as well, following your open house in March, was just about the cross-section. So the feeling that one side was an urban cross-section of the road, so on the west, and on the east side it was a more rural cross-section.
Yeah.
Can you just comment on that?
Sure. So as you're probably aware, the urban boundary is the center line of Rice Road.
Right.
So the east side is considered rural, the west side is considered urban. We don't usually, very seldomly would we urbanize a rural side. The west side obviously is urbanized to blend in with all the development work, the multi-use path. We have to put in storm sewers, so putting in storm sewers means eliminating the ditches on the west side. So it might seem odd to people that don't necessarily know the whole issue of urban boundaries, but
Right.
Considering the funds that would be required to urbanize just so the two sides matched, it just doesn't really make sense.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that
But
information.
that being said, we are making improvements to the drainage on the east side as well.
Oh,
Ditch
good.
improvements, making sure ditch grades are corrected if there's any ponding there, things like that. So it's not going to
Well, that's good to
be
hear.
totally ignored.
Good, thank you very much.
Yep.
So the final question I have is if the tender is going to Public Works on the Tuesday, I think it's the 26th,
That's right.
what's the schedule for that first phase? Is it, I can't imagine that it can be all done kind of from July until the end of the year. So what's the,
So July 5th is council approval. We hope to have the agreement signed very, very shortly after that. And we can't really talk to the contractor until that's done, but we're
Oh, I
hoping
see.
they'll be able to move in very shortly after, because that is quite late in the year. And that's why we've broken it up. We're pretty comfortable that from Highway 20 to just north of Port Robinson can be done, and not, we definitely don't want to extend into late fall, early winter. What we are going to do is we're only going to put down base asphalt on the first phase, and then when we get the second phase done in 2019, we'll do top asphalt on the entire project from end to
Okay.
end, so.
okay, that's great. Thank you very much. We appreciate the update
Okay,
and the
you're
answering
welcome.
of questions for council. Unless there's no further questions, I want to say thank you very much, Mr. Milne, for your presentation. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved, the council receive the presentation by Mr. Milne, being an update on Rice Road improvements by the Regional Municipality of Niagara for information.
Thank you.
Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. Thank you as well. Thanks, Frank. We have some folks here that have been patiently waiting for a delegation, and that is Gail Hillier, who's the chair of the Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee. She's here and going to make a presentation to us. Is there anything that goes on the screen? Okay, I understand there's nothing for the computer screen, although you did provide us some information that council has here, so a very comprehensive report. So thank you very much. And there's also members of the Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee that are here this evening, and I'm hoping that you'll introduce them as well.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, that's a start. I want to thank the mayor and council for giving us an opportunity to tell you what we've been doing in the last year. And I want to also thank you for your support, particularly our liaison person, Councillor Papp, who was attending most meetings and had good advice for us. So I thank you, Peter, for that. It was helpful. I'd like to introduce the members of our committee who are here. Sharon Cook beside me, who's the vice chair of the committee. Del Rainey, who is the president of the Fonthill Lioness, right? And keeps our contact with other service clubs. And Bob Hildebrand, who faithfully comes to meetings and provides us with wise advice and timing to be through on time to leave. And Sue Cook, who's in the back there. And among other things, Sue is the representative of Pelham Cares. Now, did I forget anybody? I did. B. Clark. How could I do that? B's the, as you well know, the chair of the Pelham Active Transportation Committee, and has recently joined our advisory committee, and we're delighted to have her because we need to be working closer together, and this is important. I'd like you to make a correction to your report. Page 2, near the bottom, it says highlights of June. Just cross out June, please. It's highlights of 2018. We got carried away with the June.
It's Seniors Month, so.
Just a few comments.
Oh, it's because
and
it's
then
June. That's why June is Seniors Month. Okay, sorry. I was,
his turn is coming.
anyways, please continue.
As
June is Seniors Month. That's what I'm saying.
I'm just going to do a few things related to the report. There's a motion that has been brought forward related to affordable housing. It was passed by PSAC on May 2nd, 2018, and forwarded and should be in your package for information. You want me to do anything more about that?
Maybe we'll have some questions. I don't know if Counselor, so.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get well, somebody will probably raise it later, but if you want to keep going.
Okay. July 17th, 2017, Pelham was welcomed as an age-friendly community by the World Health Organization. And I have to say, I have a note of pride that we're a small community and a relatively small committee, and we were welcomed. We have a lot of work to do because we're expected to provide ongoing information to their website and a number of other things, but we want to maintain our status as an age-friendly community, and we will keep bringing forward things that have to be done. We also promise to continue to support town services and activities focused on seniors, including the providing of transportation, of the bus services, and of course the Meridian Community Center. And we've already put forward a proposal to introduce seniors to the center when the time comes. And Bea and I will meet with Vicki before very long to see who's on first base with what plan. So we're like everybody else looking forward to this. I had sort of a eureka moment this afternoon. We're doing a template for local municipal seniors and age-friendly advisory committee leaders in Niagara. That's the title for a forum. Anybody gets to repeat it gets a nickel, I think. Anyhow, but in doing that, I found we've done so much to bring ourselves from 2013, when Dave invited a group of seniors to come and talk about what could be done for seniors in Pelham. 3 of us were drafted, I think was the word, to develop some terms of reference. We went back, we did that, we brought it forward. A committee was formed in due process. And by November of 2014, we had begun the exercise of forums to get information from the community, and that was the beginning of us bringing the famous 150 item list that you hear about all the time that related to the community center. So it was interesting to do this exercise, and I mentioned to Dave before, we were asked to say what we learned from all of this exercise. Well, for me, it was patience, because we have to come here or in some way or other tell you what we're doing. We can't just do it, and it's been an interesting process. One other thing, we applied for money last year to do a survey of our older adults. And Councillor Kersey asked me what I would do if we didn't get the money. Well, we didn't get the money, and here I am. I told him I'd be back. Seriously, we have a subcommittee working towards developing a proposal to do a survey of the 7,000 older adults that live in our community. And that's a program that will get underway in the fall. We're looking forward to finding some ways to do it within the resort, not asking for money at the moment. Looking at some ways to do this within our own group. There's a lot more, but I think I'd just like to say thank you publicly to all of the committee members who are just really great at putting their hand up and saying, I'll do it, whether it's Canada Day or Summerfest or the Freeze or Vermeers or whoever else we're going to show up at on Saturday or the next Saturday. And I think as a town and a council, you should be really proud of them. So I share that with you. And I'll answer any questions if you have them.
That's great. Thank you so much. We are very proud of your work, and we appreciate your work. And I certainly want to say I meant no offense. I was just saying it's Seniors Month, so that's why you probably put June on there, because it is Seniors Month. So I certainly, hopefully no offense was taken.
Okay.
None was intended.
Thank you.
I will open it up to questions, and I'm going to ask Councillor Papp if he has any comments as
Yep.
the council representative on the committee, and as well any, perhaps we can talk about that resolution as well.
Yeah,
Councillor Papp.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for the latitude. Thank you, Chair Gale, and to the members of the committee. I can't tell you how much I'm honored and pleased to be part of you. Been there from the very beginning when they were first formed, went through all the emancipations of public education, deciding what we want to become. And I think the last couple of years, I think we've crystallized ourselves as a group of people who really do have a great understanding of what needs to be done as far as age-friendly. And by the way, people should know that on this committee, we also have a member from the Mayor's Youth Advisory. So it means what it says, from very young to very old. Along those lines, I wanted to note that the issue of not getting money was, I think, important, but I think we're trying to work towards the Seniors Hub Center, and I know that Chair Gale's been talking, and with the community center, we've set aside an area, and we'll continue to pursue that. The whole idea of us, and I've said this time and time again, our town and this committee being able to get the designation under the World Health Organization is humongous. It has implications on everything that we do, from a policy procedural guideline to building and constructing, because we have to be in tune with who our population is. And part of that is what our group is going to be doing as part of the research is, who are we as far as seniors? Where do they come from? What background? And I think that data will be essential in us trying to determine, not only for ourselves, but for you as council public policy. So that's invariably the ultimate. Finally, but not last, one of the goals of this group was to look at affordable housing, and I look forward to our colleagues discussing this, and we've had extensive discussions. In fact, we had a public forum on that where we invited, and I want to thank Vice Chair Cook for helping. We, two of us sort of, I shouldn't say this, worked on all the information in that. So can it be done? The answer is yes, it can. It requires a public policy change, and that's why the group is advocating for, as part of their goal, for the incorporation of affordable housing for seniors in our community. And I know that all of our members of our council will work towards that endeavor. It's not easy, but we know that as our Director of Planning and others are working on the comprehensive zoning bylaw, as we work with other developers, and they are becoming more amenable to the idea that, in one hand, it's nice, and we are seeing very, very good return on our investments with homes and that. On the same token, as many of you know, some of them are involved in the development community. In some cases, it's unreachable to be able to get into housing. So we're pushing, and I'm advocating, just as a part of this committee, that we continue to look at that particular policy incorporation as we move towards a whole new different type of zoning, and more importantly, a more different type of, or I should say more inclusive type of zoning that would reflect upon what we've been trying to establish, is the ability for our seniors and any, not only locally, but externally, who come in to have access to local housing. And I use that as case in point. Many of our young people are looking to, we want them to stay, live here, play here, but they also have to afford it. So we will continue to drive this endeavor, and I want to say, Mr. Mayor, thank you. That was the spirit and the intent, and we have given you, as part of that, is a lot of background information where other municipalities have actually done this, and I thank you for that opportunity to speak to it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Papp. I don't know if any other councillors want to talk about that, but I just want to jump in if it's okay. And you provided the information from other municipalities that are doing that. This council has, in terms of housing that's affordable or affordable housing, this council has said in its zoning bylaw, which is one of the tools that's outlined in the kit that you provided, that we do want to do that, and we've given that direction to staff. When that zoning bylaw comes back to the community, we're going to need your help to advocate for that, because some members of the public will look at that and want to dismiss it outright. So I'm hopeful, Councillor Papp and members of the committee, that you'll help explain the rationale for that piece to be in the zoning bylaw, that it would help seniors, it would help others as well, with more housing that's affordable. So I kind of put that out as a challenge, because I think it will be an issue when that comes forward.
We understand. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kersey's been very patient.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Gail, and all the members of the committee for the great work you've done since your inception. You certainly have poked the bear enough times that we know you're there, and you've brought forward good initiatives that have helped our community move forward to make it more senior-friendly and more senior-usable. So thank you for that. Greatly appreciate it. I'd just like to make a comment. One of your points going forward is to identify a venue as a hub or a center for seniors. I'm a little bit confused about that, given that just recently the entire Meridian Community Center has been designated as a senior active living center, which in turn opens up dollars and cents for hiring a senior programmer to work with the seniors in our community to move things forward so that we can provide services that will be beneficial to our seniors. And secondly, it opens up funding for resources to run those programs. So could you expound a little bit further on what exactly you're looking for? Because I thought that initiative really would have spoken very well to that.
Be able to assist the councillor.
To get money,
We did.
we need, the community needs to identify a place, and it's called the various things. Hub is the in word. It's not my word, but it's the in word. That we can identify that is a place, if I may use an indigenous term, given the time we're talking, where we can put our moccasins and say that it's our place to be. And I'm not trying to suggest programming. We have to be able to say to the World Health Organization, we sort of did that already, although we didn't really have one. That's why we didn't get money from New Horizons. Very clearly in the document it said, you don't have a place for your seniors to be, and it's not programming particularly. We talk about it in terms of programming, but it's a term where seniors can come. There's a lot of talk about coffee cards and that kind of thing, but I just want to step back with a bigger vision and say it's a place where seniors can be. And we have to use the language that goes with the fundraising. Is that do, Vicki? And that's part of it. The other part, of course, is to have a place for seniors to be where they can, we can go and play cards, we can go and gossip, we can go and walk on the walking track. Somebody suggested it was time for me to learn to play hockey. I hope you're insured. No, not seriously. But the term hub is the N word. Gary, I'm probably not explaining it very well, but we need to say that Pelham has a seniors center, a hub, a venue, something, in terms of proposals that we put together and pass along to you. And with our experience of losing money precisely, we lost money specifically because we couldn't identify that we had a hub. And that was fairly recently, like December. So we can go back, by the way, when we can identify that we have a place to be. I don't want to ramble on, but I don't know if
Okay.
I'm being clear about
Well,
it.
I think the counselor was asking, and maybe it's obviously something to work on. The counselor was asking about the grant that the town received in the order of $42,000, $43,000 for a seniors active living center,
Yeah.
and the designation that the new Meridian Community Center will have, so that there will be a person to do the programming, and the facility will be that place, I think is what the counselor is saying.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's perhaps, what I might recommend is maybe Ms. Van Ravensway, who's overseeing that program, will present to the Seniors Advisory Committee about the opportunity that this funding for actual operational dollars provides, and want to work together with the seniors. Maybe that's where you were going.
That's precisely
Sorry.
where I was going,
Counselor, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, was to suggest that the seniors advisory committee interface with our staff, and, you know,
You arrange that, Peter.
maybe it's just massaging the terminology and defining what we expect there. So I think it's an opportunity, and it does open some funding for the community, and it might help you open funding for your organization, for your advisory committee as well. So perhaps we could pursue that.
And that was the intent of using, when you read our going forward section in our report, that was the intent, to make sure that we keep that language up front and in all of our motions that we bring forward, or our conversation with Vicky's people, so that we can talk about a hub.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to turn my attention to the motion that the committee has brought forward, and hopefully you'll help bring some clarity to my mind on what the expectation of this motion is, or the gist of this motion is. Because when I look back at our planning documents that both have been adopted and are proposed to be adopted going forward, it seems to me that this council has been, and our staff have worked very diligently to be supportive of providing affordable housing, or a variety of housing, to not just seniors, but to all of our community. But in particularly, I'd like to point out a couple of things that are currently in the OP and are proposed in the zoning bylaw. So, for example, in the OP, it allows within virtually the entire community secondary dwellings within the home. So if we take that and extrapolate, so a senior is living in a home and they want to continue living in that home, they could put an apartment or two, I think it's up to two, rent those out to offset some of their costs, so they could age in place. On the contrary, they could sell their home, and that homeowner that purchased, and I'm just using an example,
Yeah.
could build a garden suite, for example, and they could live in the garden suite. So there's a variety of, and I won't go into every single one, but there's a variety of housing types that are supported in our OP. Virtually every single subdivision that comes forward now must provide a variety of housing types. So from townhouses, stacked townhouses, apartment dwellings, through to single-family homes. Similarly, the zoning bylaw, which is coming forward, will support our OP, because that's mandated by law. So all of the things that are encased in the OP will be supported by the zoning, comprehensive zoning bylaw that's coming forward. And lastly, one of the initiatives that we've just recently passed in our new development charge bylaw, which is not quite finalized, but we're getting there, is we're providing exemption from development charges for these secondary dwellings, dwelling units in single-family homes, for garden suites, and that variety of housing. So again, the view is to lessen the cost for those folks who want to pursue that type of housing and incorporate it in so that people of lesser income could stay in our community and be supported in our community. And furthermore, I'd just like to also point out a couple of other initiatives that we have been working on. We heard loud and clear from your committee that you needed affordable housing for seniors. So we sought out a developer who has now brought forward a 10-story building, 40% of which will be deemed affordable housing. So we are working diligently to try and address some of the issues that you have brought forward to us on several occasions, and I think we've worked hard there. So, and in some of our other lands that we presently own, we are trying to sell those lands for multi-use type housing or development, with the view that many of the residential units that will be on the second and third and fourth floors will be rental units, with the hope that, in fact, they will provide some affordability apart from buying a $600,000 house, that they could stay in the community in a rental circumstance. So those are a number of things. So that long preamble, please forgive me, but I'd like you to try and bring some clarity to what, in addition to those sort of things, are envisioned within your motion so that I can understand going forward how we could help you.
Sounds like a longer conversation, but
Yeah, I know it is, Mr. Mayor, but I think it's
Ms.
important.
Hillier, Ms. Hillier,
My discussion tonight relates to the famous hub. The affordable housing is a secondary, or it's not secondary to us, but all of the things related to aging in place, the need for services. Like, I don't want to go on forever, but Pelham as a community has very few services for seniors. They're mostly out of the community, and when we had Park Hill come and talk with us at their request about the amenities that they were talking about, and we brought out this subject again of needing to have rental space, market rental space, but for services for seniors that are not available at the moment. Anyhow, and the issue of affordable housing is mentioned, I think, clearly in the motion that you have in your package, and I'd have Sharon or Peter speak to it. It's just separate from what I'm talking about, which is, I don't know, perhaps I'll say a place to play, where seniors are welcome, a place that's accessible for them. And at that moment, I wasn't talking about housing, not to exclude it, Councillor Kersey, but I was talking about a place that the town would identify that was appropriate for seniors to, I'll say, play.
Okay, thank you very much.
okay?
Yeah.
Anything further, Councillor?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Papp?
Very
real
quickly.
quick?
Yeah, I just don't want.
Ms. Hillier's
So-
been standing for a long time, so.
So, Councilor Kersey, we're going to take all of that. We understand that, respect that. We want to continue this conversation. And there's some more information that has been shared with us in other parts of Ontario that we'll bring forward as time moves on. I'm not sure it'll be happening before the election is over, but there's some other areas in which we saw policy development that would encourage the type of housing we're discussing. So we respectfully will receive that, and we will embellish that, or I should say, build on that as time moves on. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? I would just ask, I just real quick, one of your presentations here, or some of the information you provided, saying that you want to have a closer affinity to the Pelham seniors group that meets at Old Pelham Town Hall. And I would just ask if you might want to consider, you talked about the terms of reference before with Pelham Cares, et cetera. maybe we need to expand the terms of reference. So we'll look for your leadership on that.
Thank you for the question. It's part of our going forward. We have been talking to a couple of the people who are very much involved with that organization
Yep.
and live at Lookout, actually.
Right.
And they sort of, their activities in some ways have got smaller because they don't do bus tours and some
Right.
of the things that they used to do. But I actually have on my bucket list to talk to Julie, who does programming there, to find out if we can encourage one of the people, now that it's an appropriate time after an election, to apply for a position on the Seniors Advisory Committee. Because I think we should have one of their members working with us.
Will there be
Yeah.
interaction?
Yes.
Perfect.
See that on my kind of going forward list as something that I think that we've been remiss in doing. I talked to them one-on-one,
Mhm.
but we haven't gone through a process, and that's on the bucket list here.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you so much for your presentation and for answering the questions that members of council have asked. And thanks again for your work. We really appreciate it. And we know that it sounds like Ms. Van Ravensway and/or appropriate staff would be requesting to make a presentation and having a discussion at one of your upcoming meetings about what that active seniors living center could look like, that hub that you're talking about, and how we might, use the Meridian Community Center the best to become that seniors hub perhaps. So thank you again. I do have a motion moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Kersey. Be it resolved, the council receive the chair's report from the Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee dated June 2017 and June 2018 for information, and the council receive for information a motion from the Seniors Advisory Committee recommending that council ensure the town residents have options for affordable housing available to them. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you so much, and we look forward to working with you on those initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final presentation delegation this evening is Susan Phillips, requesting a heritage designation on 808 Canberra Road, and I believe the clerk is going to assist you. I wondered, I saw some folks here being very cold. Is it too cold in here?
It's cold.
I don't know if somebody can, Ms. Weens, can you adjust the temperature? It appears too cold.
And to advance it, I just.
Sometimes we get over enthused with the air conditioning if it's hot outside, and then it affects us in here. Thank you, Ms. Bizzotto.
Okay,
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Go ahead.
my name is Susan Phillips. I live at 808 Canberra Road. Many of you, that's in Fenwick. Many of you won't know where that is. It is the former church manse of the Fenwick United Church. So it was the building that was created right next to the Fenwick United Church to house the minister. I bought the property in June 2017, and I've lived there with my family ever since. I love and I cherish this house. I am requesting today that it be considered for municipal heritage designation. It is a I'm going to quickly go through several aspects of the property. There are three components of the house that I believe make it a candidate for a designation for municipal heritage status. One is its architectural value. It's early 1900s style of architecture. There is the very interesting history behind the house that is very reflective of our community. And there's the proximity of it very close to downtown Fenwick. So the house is right front and center in Fenwick at one of the most busiest crossroads that we have there. The crossroad of Church Street and Canberra Road. So here's a Google Earth site of it. Here's the church right here, if you can see my mouse, and The manse is right on the corner, very busy spot, and it's got one big tree in front of it, but it is very nicely visible to the entire town. Here's a picture of the manse, what it is now. I took that 2 days ago, I guess, and a postcard from 1910, how it looked at the time. The church had an entrance on the front of it at the time. The side entrance wasn't made, but the manse is in fact original. Okay, the manse is it has attributes that have not changed over the years. It's on its absolute original footprint. There are some changes that have taken place to the side of it, but not the footprint. I can tell you full well, after living in it for a year, the house is completely original on the inside. It's been well taken care of. There are some issues that need to be dealt with, but it is an absolute historic gem, I'll tell you that much. The church house, which I call it, is an example of the Gothic Revival architecture. So it has window openings of various sizes and shapes. The exterior is brick, and it has decorative brick work around the windows. It's got natural limestone windowsills, wonderful leaded colored glass windows. It has 2 porches, one on the front and one on the side, facing Cambro, with original posts and wood trim work that's of the Gothic Revival architecture style. It has a projecting porch with a chamber above, and it's right next to the Fenwick United Church. So real quiet neighbors, except for Sunday at 11 o'clock, which beautiful bells ring out if I'm not in church. So here's the brick features around the windows. It's got a curved feature, as is typical of that day and age. You can see the outside of the leaded glass. Inside, looking out, the leaded glass is absolutely striking. I have never lived in a house that has leaded glass of this quality before, and I wish to preserve it. It would be an absolute shame if somebody, if ever, removed those glass windows. They are part of the house and very striking. Original, 1900s. So there's the porch. I'm just going to quickly go through the architecture because I really want to focus on the story of the house. There's the porch with the little scrolling architectural features. There's the one on the side. And here's the extending porch with the chamber above. So the part that sticks out with like the bay window in the side. And you can see the little scrolling features of it that are very period specific. The front door is original. It has been painted many times over the years, but I can tell you the hardware is still original. So what I would like to tell you about, though, is the very significant historical features of this house. It's very interesting. And I'll quickly go through it in about 5 minutes, the story behind the house. And the story behind the house is one that is about what created the village of Fenwick. Truly it is. There was a mass influx of pioneers in the early 1800s to the area. So it was an uncut rural area. Pioneers moved in. They were on isolated plots of land in clearings with their families, you know, small little wood shacks trying to make a go of it. They're settling the land. The Methodists came in, the Methodist Church, and they provided religious services to the pioneers. They were the most specific religious group that was very akin to working with missionaries and pioneers at the time. They were very used to that coming up from the southern states and from Europe. So they arrived in town, and they were going out to the fields. They would have meetings in barns and people's kitchens, and little by little, they gathered up people as part of their church. They were encouraging the faithful, strengthening the morale of the settling the new land, and they were engaging the pioneers into a central community. By 1835, 2 churches evolved around the very busy Canberra Road. So Fenwick hadn't yet become a community. Fenwick hadn't been designated as a community yet. It was known as like Diffin's Corners because of the there was like the Temperance Hotel that was there, which my ancestors ran, by the way. 2 churches evolved. One was on the busy crossroads of Balfour and Canberra, kitty corner to Pelham High School. So that church sprung up,
Right.
and then there was one on the corner of Church and Canberra. They were small wood frame buildings, and they had very small groups of people, but they were proud of them. As there was maybe 11 families, in one and 8 in the other. But things were evolving. More people were moving to the area. By 1835, so the 2 churches were the Bethany Episcopal Methodist Church and the Fenwick Wesleyan Methodist Church. And they were 2 little wooden buildings. In 1886, the Bethany Methodist built a brick building that is now it's now an apartment building on the corner of Balfour and Canberra. So the Bethany's got going with that brick building. Everybody joined together and built that. And then in 1900, the 2 churches worked together to build the Fenwick Methodist, the church that exists today, that is Fenwick United Church. So the 2 Methodist church worked together to build this one big church. Well, things were evolving very quickly. People were moving into the area. It was kind of like it is now, booming, with the aim of coming together as a community. Very similar time period, really. I mean, it's just back in the 1900s. The 2 churches at the time were sharing services. They were sharing Sunday schools, ministers at the time, and it became a sensible thing that they would join together as one church. So the 2 Methodists came together and decided to move into the Fenwick Wesleyan Methodist Church. And at the time, they then sold off the, in 1902, they sold off the building at the corner of Balfour and Canberra. And the Presbyterians bought that because they now had enough people to facilitate a church as well. At the time, in 1902, when the Bethany Church moved in, the 2 Methodist churches came together. They had enough funds and enough people to build the United Church manse. Okay, so they built the manse. And the manse is now a symbol of the 2 churches coming together. It's a symbol of Fenwick growing to a size that the pioneers had always hoped it would, and becoming a focal point. They pooled all their resources together. These guys worked the fields at night and then got together, created this house out of all volunteer hours, volunteer money. There's word in the historical documents that some people had actually mortgaged their farms to be able to build the manse. And they wanted to build it because they wanted to attract a full-time minister, which they did. There are pictures of, here's a picture of 1910 on a postcard. So it was such a flashy thing at the time that they made a postcard of it. And I got this from the Pelham Historical Society, the little room that they have at the Pelham Library. But you can see at the time they built the manse and they had enough money to build this fancy bell tower on the top. And the bell tower has been modified, but it still stands that way today. And the house in this postcard is identical, aside from the roof. They had to do some fixing to the roof, but it's identical. So my point to you today is that the church manse has very deep roots in this community. The building is a visual representation of a community coming together, the pioneering era, where everybody joined together with a thought of the future and said, this is something that we need to further our village and to make us a whole village. And it was a very integral part to the community at the time. To get to that point took 100 years, okay? So they started off in the early 1800s with a vision. 100 years later, in 1902, the house at 808 Canberra Road became the church manse. That's how long it took to get the momentum going. But when they did, they got together and they made it happen. You know, I live in that house and I see that I'm around the outside of it all the time. And there is nothing clearer to me when you see all the details in the house on the outside as well as the inside, that there was a vision that these people worked towards. And they built it, and it stands there today. And when it got built, it's now 116 years later. To maintain a visual representation of history of our town is incredibly important. Without the visual history, how do we pass on to our next generations exactly what brought us to this point? Okay? That house sitting there on that spot with hundreds of people passing by a day, it's literally the busiest corner in Fenwick. That house sitting there is like an open history book to all those who pass. And people can say, Mommy, why is that house so different than all the rest? And there's a story attached to it. With this municipal designation, I'm hoping that the story of this house can be preserved forever. Just like the library, just like the flagpole in Fenwick, we can preserve history, and we can pass this on as a sustainable, social sustainability to the next generations. Here it is, busiest corner in Fenwick, right here. So everybody sees it, and it's very present in town. I'd just like to finish up by saying there's much rich history behind 808 Canberra Road. It connects all who sees it with the rich history that created it. It's a sign of success of the pioneering era, and the house is part of the fabric of our community. I respectfully request to the Mayor, Dave Augustine, and Council today that you consider designating 808 Canberra Road as a municipal heritage building going forward. And I thank you for letting me talk and present today.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much for sharing your passion about this, about the structure and the history that the research that you've done. I know in conversations with you that one of the reasons you wanted to buy the house was to preserve it, and I think that's in some of the documents that you did so with worry that someone might buy it and knock it down or change it or somehow ruin the history that you've just described to us. So I certainly appreciate on behalf of council colleagues your passion and the presentation that you've given us today. So thank you very much.
That's very factual. In fact, for real, true. I bought the house when it came. I mean, I tried to buy it. It was like a bidding war at the time. And I purchased the home with the thought that there is no way that anybody's going to bulldoze this house, not on my watch, because I knew there was developers looking for the lot. I watched them day in and day out drive around it. I own a house on Maple Street as well. And I bought the house thinking that, nope, tomorrow I'm going to buy it, and then I'm going to sell it to somebody who's going to take care of it. And then I went, wait a minute, I think I'm going to move it. This is the coolest house I've ever lived in. And then I moved into it, and I've lived in it happily ever since. I am the first private citizen to own the house since it was made. It's been owned by the United Church of Canada ever since, been rented out since the 80s. But it's been in good care for the last year.
Thank you. So questions from Members of council to Ms. Phillips? I think the only question, what about process in terms of, so I don't think we can just, although you provide a very compelling case, I don't think we can just designate it today. So I'm going to turn to our Director of Planning, if she can outline the process that we would follow in order to take this information and then council would formally consider some sort of heritage designation. Ms. Weens?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. If you were to, refer this to staff, we would go through the process of doing, augmenting the research that's already done, filling in any gaps if there are any. We would do what we call writing up the character statement for it. We'd bring a report to you with a recommendation as to all the characteristics that would make this property worthy of designation. If you were to support that request for designation, then we have to go to the process of publishing in the newspaper and serving notice on the Ontario Heritage Trust that this property is going to be designated. We have to give public notice, I think a period is 30 days. And if there's no objections to that notice, then we can bring a bylaw forward to council to pass a bylaw to designate the property.
So it's a bit of a process. But no doubt you'll work with Ms. Phillips on that, should
Absolutely.
council approve it.
Absolutely.
Okay. One other thing, I know you outlined, and we've had a conversation, as you see, council, about the windows and things like that. But we've also had a conversation, and you can see it in some of the pictures. There's a doorway that was filled in, or a window that was filled in, and a doorway. And I think the idea is that maybe those should consideration be given to allow somehow in the designation. You can just see it in the picture.
You can just see right.
So I guess my
right
question
here.
is to the director, could the designation allow for a conversion back to what it was previously, or how flexible can it be, I guess, in that way?
Yes, certainly,
Quickly.
Mr. Mayor. There's opportunities to alter and provide for change on a designated property. Certainly the report and the descriptor would indicate that those windows and openings were there. And again, if they were to be reinstated, there'd be consent required from council to permit that, which is not overly onerous or anything
Okay.
like that. You just recently dealt with a similar circumstance where there was an addition proposed on a designated house, and consent was granted by council for that. So those are, again, it's not an onerous process, and it's not difficult to seek opportunities for change if it's warranted on a designated house. What the bylaw would do is identify what are the important elements that you'd want to conserve, and as long as you're not changing those significant elements, adversely impacting on those elements, then alterations and change can occur to a designated property.
Okay, thank you.
Good to know.
Good. Thank you very much. So thanks very much for your presentation, and thank you
You're welcome.
for that information. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Ribbiak, second by Councillor King. Be it resolved that the correspondence and presentation from Susan Phillips requesting that the property known as 808 Canberra Road receive a heritage designation be received and referred to the Planning Department for study and report. And that study and report is the one that Ms. Weens just outlined. So I'm going to call unless there's any other comments by members of council, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. And staff will work together with you on that report and on that designation. Thank you very much, Ms. Phillips. Now we move, after many presentations and a couple of delegations, now we move into adoption of minutes and carry on with the remainder of our meeting. So thank you all. It has been moved by Councillor Lane, second by Councillor Kersey. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. Minutes of the special council meeting of June 4th, the council minutes of June 4th, and the special council minutes of June 13th, 2018. Any errors or omissions in those minutes? There be none. I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Now we move to consent agenda items, which we would consider in block. But before we do so, I'd ask if any members have any items they'd like to consider under a separate consideration and not under block. Councillor Papp?
I'm not sure if it's, but I'll lift it anyways. 9711, the JAAC correspondence regarding sidewalks.
Okay, thank you. Others? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to call the, or going to move the motion here, or read the motion. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Lane. Be it resolved, the following consent agenda items be received, and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. 9.1, presentation of recommendations arising from the Committee of the Whole meeting of June 4th, 2018, and the Special Committee of the Whole meeting of June 11th, 2018, and also under 9.2, the minutes approved from each of those meetings. We have staff reports of routine nature for information or action, the 2017 General Government Year-End Balance Update, and be it resolved that Council receive this update report for information. 9.3.2, removal of the holding H provision, zoning bylaw amendment, recommendation to report file number AM 0618 105 Highway 20 East, Regional Road 20 Pelham, and the motion be it resolved the Council receives the Planning and Development Department's recommendation report as it pertains to application file number AM 0618 105 Highway 20 East, and the Council adopt the bylaw authorizing the removal of the holding H provision on the subject lands. And we'll be dealing with that bylaw at the end of the meeting momentarily. And committee minutes of information. So they were kind of combined here,
Yeah.
Councillor Papp. So the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes of March 8th and April 12th, 2018, be it resolved the Council receive those minutes for information. Okay? Questions or comments on any of those items? Question for our treasurer, under the year-end balance, I presume that once we receive this, this will be updated or has been updated? And should it be marked, it's been updated sort of thing?
It is updated, that report updates in, so the totals were correct. It was just the side column that didn't extend properly, but the totals were correct.
Okay.
So this is
So
just
will
this is just to make sure that the right report is in the minutes.
My question is, will that report then not only be here, but also where we dealt with it previously a few
Okay,
weeks
I'll
ago? If
deal
that
with
can
the
be
clerk on
updated
that.
as well, and
Okay.
maybe marked as updated,
Okay,
so that
yes.
somebody looking back will,
Yeah,
they
okay.
don't have to look in two spots, right?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. It has been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Lane, that the correspondence from the Chair of the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee highlighting concerns related to sidewalks be received and referred to staff for consideration and report. Councillor Papp, anything further?
No, that's fine. That's what I was getting at. That's self-explanatory and that you've covered it in the staff report.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't
Okay.
realize that. That's fine.
Okay, thanks very much. I know
Thank you.
that the director is ready if there's a question. I understand we have some, this is about sidewalks in general,
Right.
but we have some standard operating procedures. Madam Director, if you can just go through those real quick.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, really quick, Sidewalk 101. There are legislative requirements or legislated minimums for patrolling and maintenance of sidewalks. So there's really two issues at hand. One is about new sidewalks being constructed. We have those covered under the engineering design manual. Could probably use some improvement on our inspection of works being installed. On the existing sidewalks, that's where the minimum maintenance standards kick in. We inspect them annually. We inspect our roads weekly to bi-weekly, depending on the class. Things like branches and encroachment and cracks and heaving and things even such as color and imprinting and Half moons and such are regularly reported during those processes, as well as from PSRs. We can't fix everything. We have to fix based on risk. And the highest risk, based on the risk criteria that Public Works has developed, those highest risk sidewalks come to the budget request every year in capital. So we carry about $110,000 a year to do repairs across the town. We have about 70 kilometers of sidewalks we maintain. We carry about $25,000 a year to repair strictly the downtown core sidewalks, pavers, trees, benches, any of those beautification elements. So between those two is what we carry to maintain the sidewalks. And periodically we'll get larger strips of panels that do require replacement based on condition and risk again. And those come as separate requests in capital. So you remember a couple years ago we did ask for Pelham Street, a large portion between College and Port Robinson, to be replaced. Those kind of things would be separated out and put to you through the 20-year forecast. So there are a lot of different elements that come together to do the sidewalk maintenance. Winter patrol being the biggest one to change. So that report is to come to you soon. The regulatory requirements for winter maintenance of sidewalks has changed as of May, requiring us to both patrol and maintain for snow accumulation. So between all those pieces, we do have a lot of procedures and a lot of regular routine maintenance control in place. But that said, we receive the report warmly and take that information to carry it into our programs to see what we can improve.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Papp?
Thank you, Madam Director, and then at some point we'll share that report with the JAC. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Going to call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. We added an item at the start of the agenda, and that is for reports from members of council. I'll turn it over to Councillor Durley for your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Saturday afternoon, Councillor Kersey and I attended a Love My Hood block party at Rosewood, the new street just on the Pelham side of the soccer club from Welland over there. And it's a very nice community built by Rinaldi, and the neighbors who live there are all very excited to have had the opportunity to have this party. It served many purposes. Number one, it got people to know each other, talking to them. Some have been there for a year and a half. Some have been there for a week or a week and a half. So everybody got to know each other. The second benefit was that they took this as a fundraiser, and they were able to collect almost $3,600 that is going to be donated to Pelham Cares. Also, they had a couple of those big white bins where foodstuffs and that good stuff would be donated as well, and that went to Pelham Cares. So congratulations to the residents of Rosewood Crescent. You did an excellent job. You got to know your neighbors, and you certainly helped out the community and Pelham Cares. Congratulations once again. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Durley. It sounds like Councillor Papp was there
Well,
as
obviously,
well.
I missed the two of you, but I did spend some time afterwards, and I want to, well, I was there.
Sorry, we were there before Peter went.
Yeah,
And
that's
Peter-
good.
Peter
So-
came after us.
So it's like a contest to see who comes
Good.
first.
And these, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Councillor
Well,
Papp?
one of the things that I think both Councillor Durley and Councillor Kersey, I was amazed by the eclectic nature of the people that lived there. So there were people there from all parts of Canada that had moved in there. And one of the questions I was asking them is, why did you come here? One was they were attracted, believe it or not, by the affordability of the homes. They're beautiful homes. Secondly, they liked the whole closeness between the areas of downtown Pelham and also access to main arterial roads. The other thing I found was that as they found it to be an active form of a retirement. I mean, it was amazing to find the ages. And I was encouraging them, and I know both of you also did, is they continue doing this type of community type of work. So they have promised that they would also look at other forms of charities, and that the neighborhood I've been Councilor Darling were at a couple last year as well, and that this has become an actual natural way of getting to know people that under normal circumstances you probably wouldn't even talk to. And there was a great crowd, and I hope that this continues on as time goes on. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Papp. And it is, Rosewood is one of our newest subdivisions. I think, members of council were there when the Rinaldi started it with the groundbreaking. So it's great to see that they have come together as a community, and that's the whole vision of the Love My Hood program. I know that Councillor Kersey was there at the Love My Hood up in Victory Gardens. And I don't know if any other councillors were there. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't know if you want to just comment on that. Councillor Kersey put you on the spot for 30 seconds.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity. Friday I attended Victory Gardens. I think you came in later,
Yes.
but a great group of folks who really didn't know a whole lot about the history of that site. And when I told them how controversial it was that school that existed there would be torn down, and how the neighbors were concerned about the type of change that it was going to bring to the community, and yet here we ended up with a wonderful community that enjoy living together and having this block party. And there was about 80 folks there just enjoying themselves and interacting with each other, and we had some real good conversations. So I think it's an excellent program. It's one we should continue, and council, we should consider expanding in the future. There is some monetary cost and staff time involved, but well worth the expenditure from the feedback I've received. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Now we move to consideration of bylaws. There's a few folks here hoping to see these bylaws pass, so I'll read through them here. It's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King. Be it resolved, the Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration, the following bylaws do now read a first, second, and third time, and do pass the same, and that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the following bylaws. There are a few. There are none. 1, bylaw 4008, 2018, being a bylaw to remove the holding provision executed by bylaw 3867 for the lands located on the northeast corner of Station Street and Highway 20 East, Regional Road 20, municipally known as 105 Highway 20 East, legally described as part of Lot 4 NP 703 Avia Properties Limited, file number AM0618, and known as the Font Hill Yards. Bylaw 4009 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan agreement for the lands located at 105 Highway 20 East, Regional Road 20, file number SP0617. Number 3, bylaw 4010 being a bylaw to declare town-owned lands described in schedules A and B attached to the bylaw, forming part of the bylaw, surplus to the needs of the municipality and therefore available for disposition. That's 1120 Hay Street. That's the current, part of the current arena lands. Bylaw 4011, delegation of authority to the CAO and to the clerk in certain situations for certain acts during a lame duck period of council. Number 5, bylaw 4012, being a bylaw to appoint Holly Wilford as deputy clerk for the corporation of the town of Pelham and to repeal and replace bylaw 3924, 2017, 3377, 2013, and 3603, 2015. Bylaw 4013 being a bylaw authorizes the sale of town-owned lands, part of Block 4, part of Block 14, Registered Plan 59M 432, Town of Pelham, being Part 2 on Plan 59R 16105 and Part 6 on 59R 16105, subject to easement as in, do I have to read all these numbers? SN 489306 and SN 535625 to Christina Dobsey and David Compson in trust for the corporation formed without personal liability, and to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute all necessary documents to complete the transaction. That, folks, is the new medical center on Meridian Way, just directly east of the community center, approximately 2 acres at 600,000 an acre. The next bylaw, bylaw number 7, 4014, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 1136, 1987 as amended for lands located on the west side of Hay Street, municipally known as 1120 Hay Street, legally described as part of Lot 3, Concession 9 in the town of Pelham, from a public P zone to a site-specific residential 1, R1-282 zone, a site-specific residential multiple 1, RM1-283 zone, and a site-specific residential 2, R2-284 zone, Town of Pelham, file number AM0118. That one is for the zoning changes to those lands at the existing arena to zone them appropriately for the designation that the community came up with. Bylaw number 8 is bylaw 4015, being a bylaw to adopt an amendment to the official plan for the Town of Pelham planning area. Amendment number 6, 1120 Hay Street Special Policy Area, and again, that's for the existing arena on Haste. And finally, bylaw number 9, bylaw 4017, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter an agreement in order to participate in the Ontario's Main Streets Revitalization Initiative, and that's funding from the provincial government to assist with Main Street revitalization. And I think the funds are going to go into the community improvement plan. Questions or comments on any of those bylaws? Councillor Papp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just not to belabor this, but I will be not voting in favor of bylaw number 3, bylaw number 7, and bylaw number 8. Thank you.
Okay, would you like those dealt with?
No, you can move them in block, but I'm just noting on as a matter of record. Or do you want them to lift them separately?
They're going to be voted on in block, so let's vote on them
Vote on
separately.
them in block, or if you want to vote on them.
Because otherwise you'll be voting against the other bylaws, and I don't think that should be.
No, I'm not voting against the other bylaws, just those 3. Okay?
We'll do them separately.
Do them separately.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? I'm pleased that we are moving ahead with bylaw 3, 7, and 8, again, because we've talked about this in terms of working together with the community on the on that existing arena site, coming up with a plan that works with the community, and declaring those, zoning the lands to the designation that the community wants, and then also now declaring it surplus, hopefully if approved by council. So look forward to that. Why don't we deal with those first? Bylaw 3, bylaw 6, and bylaw 7. 3 is declaring it surplus. I'm sorry, 7. 7 is rezoning, and 8 is the official plan amendment. I'm going to call the question on those bylaws in block together. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Now to the remaining bylaws. I'm going to call the question on those. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. I'm just going to sign them all at once. Is that right? Those are all carried. Thank you. We have one more bylaw, and that is moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Lane. Be it resolved, the following bylaw be read a first, second, third time and passed. Bylaw 4017 to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council of the town of Pelham at its regular meeting held today on the 18th day of June 2018. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved, this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for July 16th, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. Before we, there's a question? Before we adopt the
Are we not
adjournment?
supposed to go back into camera?
It's a separate meeting.
Oh, it's a separate.
There's a question about going back into closed session. We had a separate
That's fine, apologize.
meeting,
Right.
so that will
Okay.
come after committee. But I do want to highlight something here, council. And as council will know, this is the last meeting for our Director of Public Works, Ms. Clemencio. She's saying, oh, no. Ms. Clemencio, I would have asked the CAO to do this, but he's ill today. So But Ms. Clementio has been with the town since March of 2015, just over 3 years. And on behalf of council, I want to thank you very much for your dedication and your commitment to work and to improving the town. Lots has changed in those 3.5 years in the town, and you accepted the responsibilities that were, in some cases, thrust upon you, and in many cases, all cases, welcomed by you with grace, and you did so willingly. You also embraced the innovative, creative problem-solving process that we employ with the town, and used it through many of the operations that council wouldn't see necessarily, but the community would see. And you brought those out very proudly in your reports that you brought to council, with pictures and talking about those innovations and finding efficiencies for the town and the operations that you have. Also, I'm aware, and I know council is as well, about how you brought the Public Works team together, very much so, and again, led staff together in those team building and coming together for the benefit of the town. So if I might, on behalf of council colleagues, I want to say thank you very much for your more than 3 years of service, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Let's give Andrea a round of applause. I'm not going to embarrass you by asking you to say anything, so unless you really want to, but I'm going to call for adjournment. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thanks again. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.